Good morning and welcome to this morning's webinar, ORD and OBM Retaining Wall Workflow Around Bridges, part of our ongoing series on webinars, part of our ongoing series of webinars on hot CAD topics. Just a few reminders, if you have any questions during the webinar, feel free to enter those into the Q&A portion of the webinar dialogue. We'll do our best to answer those questions in real time and potentially take some time at the end to field any additional questions. All questions and answers will be compiled into a Q&A document, which will be posted along with a recording of this webinar on the same page of our website on which you registered for this webinar. If you experience any audio difficulties during the webinar, the best way to resolve that is to log off and log back in, as we don't really have any control over the audio issues. Your presenter today is Rob Hunt from WSP. So without any further ado, I'll turn things over to Rob.
Thanks, Matt. Good morning, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for joining us. A couple of things about me. My name is Rob Hunt. I'm a chief designer and BIM leader and technology coordinator in WSP's Tampa office. And today we're going to talk about the ORD and OBM retaining wall workflow around bridges. If you're seeing the splash screen, you can see that I'm using FDOT Connect version 10.11 and ORD version 10.11.115, currently the latest software for that. What we're going to go through this morning, just a quick overview. We're going to create an MSE wall bridge wraparound. We're going to create a roadway MSE wall for the roadway backbone corridor, create a variable depth MSE wall leveling pad, and extract MSE wall quantities from model data. And the image that I have shown here is just an open bridge modeler model that is attached to the file that we're going to be creating, and kind of the end result of what we're going to be looking at. You can see the roadway backbone, we've got some MSE wall, we've got a leveling pad target, and that wraparound that we talked about. In the bottom right, this webinar is based on the PDF and the training manual for FDOT Connect MSE retaining wall example workflows. And there's a QR code on there if you want to scan that. And the good thing about this, I am doing this live, but if you need to go back, it's going to be recorded and posted at some point. And you can also check out this PDF. So I appreciate everyone's attendance and your attention, and we'll get right into it. So I'm going to open up ORD. Cancel out project-wise. So first thing we do is make sure that we're in the correct workspace, and this is the training example work set that I set up for this. So we're going to go ahead and jump into the blank file so we can create our new model file. Just give this a minute to load. And we're all loaded up. So we're going to go to the FDOT tab. We're going to go to Create File and make sure the work set is set correctly. Discipline roadway, file group, roadway design files. And you see we've got the model RD base file name chosen, and I'm going to add a modifier in here. I'll just do an underbar, and I'll do wall W1, and everything else is set okay. County, I've set the manatee, set the coordinate system, and we're going to create open file. So our new file is loaded. We can go ahead and close this out. First thing we want to do is start attaching our reference files, and we'll go to Tools, and we'll attach. We want to start with our, go to the bottom here, and we'll start with our survey, grab our terrain file, add that, and we'll go up one more, and we'll go and add our structures. This is our skewed test that we're using for this training. I'm going to add that also and open them both up. And what we'll do now is we'll just select our terrain, hover, and then set that as active. And we'll go ahead and open the plan in 3D views. Just jumping in here, I like to go ahead and just set the rotation to isometric. It kind of helps the workflow a little bit to see, especially using one screen. So now that we're in here, I'm going to choose our approach slab target and our end bent target. Now, this is all created in Open Bridge Modeler, and we're going to use these OBM solids. And once we do a little manipulation to these, we're going to use the OBM solids edges as geometry for our linear templates that we're going to place. And we're essentially going to create a facade or skin around these elements. And it's a little arduous, but we'll get through it hopefully pretty quick. I'm going to go through and actually now we're going to copy these live into this file. And now that we've done that, we can go through and turn off our skew bridge model. And we're left with just those two solids elements. So we can go through now and select those. And I want to choose the drop tool. And under drop element, I've only got solids toggled, and we're going to drop those to wireframe. So now at this point, none of this is connected to the OBM bridge model, unfortunately. But like I said, we're going to use the edges that we identify as targets to put our templates on. Let's go ahead and click over in the plan view. And just for clarity, we'll turn off a few things. Let's turn off the default 3D model, and let's turn off the bridge model in there. So we're going to go through and start choosing the 5 edges that we're going to use to skin out or place the facade around this with our templates. And this is going to be the top outside edge of the notch in the approach slab. And we're also going to come in and choose the side, the front, and the other side of the end bent back wall. So now we can go, I'm going to go to the Home tab, and I'm just going to lock those elements. We can come through now and put a selection set up and delete the elements that we don't need. Now that we've deleted those, let's go through and unlock what's left. All right, so we only have the 3D elements here that we've brought in from our bridge model. And you can see now there's nothing in 2D, but what we're going to do is we're going to set our active feature definition. And I like to use the, we'll go to roadway design, plan profile, and construction lines. I like to start off with the construction line red dash for those. What we're going to do is if we go to geometry, and it's actually model detailing, 3D elements, I want to plan by 3D elements. So I'm going to choose our first element here. I like to go clockwise and just tag all 5 elements as we go. That way we don't miss anything. So I'm going to locate that 3D, and on the left-hand screen in the 2D plan, you'll see that element pop up. And we'll go ahead and zoom in a little bit more. So as we go around, you'll see those elements populate. There we go. So now we have some elements that we can work with as plan targets as we prepare to set these up to place some linear templates on. One of the first things that we want to do is start removing the rules on these elements that we created from those OBM edges. So we actually need to go through and one at a time. I've tried doing this all at once and it will actually delete the elements or they won't be visible. So I found the best way to do it and to verify it as we go is to just go ahead and remove the rules one at a time. There again, working clockwise as we go around. Removing those rules. And one more. All right, so now we've removed all the rules from the plan view elements. What we want to do now is start preparing our profile elements for these. So I'm just going to go ahead and select this, choose our open profile model, and let's just do view 4. And I'm going to resize this window a little bit. We'll come in and we'll fit view. So now these are the profiles for those elements. And as you can see, it's not active, but first thing we need to do is actually remove the rules from this, because if you don't remove the rules first, it will not set as active. So go through and go back and set that profile as active. Now, since we're already in this, we can go through and apply our geometry to the design elements. So create civil rule feature and select in the view, and you see the civil rule information. See the length and the slope on that line. So we'll go through one at a time. And like I said, just working clockwise around it, we'll choose those elements and set the feature on those. This can get a little tricky when you're working with smaller elements and you have to hit that context pop up just right. Create that. And it's a good verification too, to make sure that it pops up as you're working through, get that geometry info. So a little bit of setup as we go here to manipulate these elements so that we can use them and apply the templates on. There's a couple of things. I mean, you could go through and you could trace those out, but kind of the best thing maybe if you're not familiar with the workflow and how to set those targets up. Let me grab this again. All right. Just hover over that. We'll reopen it to be safe. All right. So now let's set our civil rule feature. There we go. Remove that rule. Come back and set it as active. Select the rule feature and one more. All right. So now we have the civil rule feature set and the active profile set for all of those profile elements. Now we can come back through in our plan view and we can set all of our plan view elements. We can rule those all at once and just go around and double check, make sure that's on there. So just taking a look at this real quick, it's showing the active profile. We've got our construction line on there. I just want to kind of go around clockwise again. Got to zoom in a little bit on these smaller targets and make sure that everything is coming up correctly. All right. And last one. There we go. All right. So now we've got these files, or sorry, these elements that we've imported from our OBM solid edges, and they're ready to start manipulating and adding extra targets too. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to, let's use construction lines blue. And we're going to place a few new targets. So under the geometry tab, just going to place a line, and I'm going to start up here with this corner. I'm going to drag this down. And so what we're doing here is we're setting up new geometry elements, new targets, so that we can accurately skin or place these templates around this wall. And we're taking into consideration expansion joints, gaps, that type of stuff as we put this together to get everything to line up with our templates correctly. So we've placed our new line here, and we're going to go ahead and just remove the rule from this so we can make some changes to it. We're actually going to copy this to get our 1 inch offset from our back wall. And I like to use AccuDraw on this. So what I've done is I selected it, and then we're going to copy it out. So we'll lock out AccuDraw, and it's hard to see, but it's 1 inch, copying that off 1 inch. Now what we need to do is we need to trim this approach slab target. And usually it's easier to grab the end of the element by the manipulator and choose the intersect snap. And I'm going to grab itself in the new line that we placed. We'll do it again for the other side of the wall. Grab it by the end using just plain old intersect snap here and putting that down. Now, we've changed the horizontal for these lines, but they also had an active profile. And what we need to do is go through and now trim back that profile element. So we're going to open the profile for this view. So in view 4, so you can see that we're overhanging a little bit now. We'll just select that. And if you grab the slider, you can move it out. And if you see that, it's got a little yellow X on there. What it did was it tentatively chose the end of where the new element is horizontally. So we're going to just accept that. That's the easiest way I found to move these guys around depending on the element. So we've got that sign. Let's go ahead and do the other side to match. And you can see a little bit overhang there. Trim that back and accept it. So now we've got our revised profile element links. All right, now the next thing we want to do is we want to move these sides in so that they match these guys. So using AccuDraw again, I'm just going to grab that manipulator and move it up. I'll lock it out with the AccuDraw lock, and I'm going to just snap to that other side. Now, if you try to use the sliders on some of these and try to get it lined up, it doesn't always work as you would expect it to. It doesn't grab the right side. It doesn't line up correctly. But I found just depending on what you need, using AccuDraw and those snaps seem to work out pretty good. All right, now, so we've lined up these target elements. We've got to do a little bit of changes to these guys to get them now to also line up. So we're going to grab that element and it'll be the same thing. It'll be hard to actually drag this over an intersect snap. So there again, just grab the end, kind of like a free float on that element, and we'll grab that and intersect that. Same thing here, it's off just a little bit. But here, we're coming right over to another element that we can just snap to the end of it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You can trim it back a little and it might work better that time. There you go. See, it worked on the second try. I found out that if it's a little bit too close and you want to drag it with that slider, it doesn't always work. You got to come back just a little bit more because of the tolerance in there, and then it seems to work out pretty good. Or you could use the circle manipulator and grab it and do an intersect snap. It's always an option. Let's go back up top here, and we're going to change this. One of the situations where we also want to consider just using an intersect snap and grabbing those. So yeah, there's a lot of manipulation going on of these elements, but it's a good way to get accurate, representation and getting these things lined up. So, all right, we've got our plan view lined up on those elements. Let's go through and modify the profile view now for those things that we just changed. So now they're going to be long on one side, right? And short maybe on the other, short maybe on both sides. So we can use the same font and drag this out and let it AccuSnap to extend that. Here's another one. It's a really short distance. I'll show you how it doesn't always work using the sliders. See, it's wanting to move that element at the same time. We just do a quick reset so we can actually drag it back. Now bring it out further and it snaps to that with no problem. Now, one thing that we need to do is we actually need to drop this target. We need to drop it by 0.04. And that's to get it to line up under that end bend, that cheek wall. So right now it's 21.76. We want to modify this to 21.72. And these are just values that I've kind of worked out ahead of time. And all of these values are going to be a little bit different depending on your bridge, depending on your templates, how they're set up. I've just found that going through this, it's in this case 21.72 on the element. So let's grab the other target up here. We'll make the changes to the profile element. I'm going to open that view and you'll see the same thing. We're coming up a little bit short here, but we should be able to drag these and let the AccuSnap work for us. Same on this end, and that works out pretty good. So now we also want to drop this elevation by our 0.04. Let's try that again. Hover, so 20.82, so now it's going to be 20.78. We'll accept that, and it moved it down for us. So now we've got those lined up. Next thing that we want to do is we want to come through and we want to offset this end bend, the front face of it. So we can come through, we're going to match. Let's go back to our red dashed, changing it from the blue. So if we go to the offsets and tapers, we can do single offset entire element. And you can see that I got remove offset rule turned off on that because we have to make a few changes to that. So the offset in this case is going to be 2.67 feet. We'll select that and no mirror. Now we want to line this one up also. So we're going to grab the bottom, grab this manipulator, see the free float, and then intersect snap, intersect itself, and what we want to line it up with. That seems to work out really good. Same thing for this end. It looks close, but it's not right where we need it. So intersect that to get it in the right area. Now we need to build the rest of this, the front of the wall that comes around with the coping around the end bent cap, around the end bent. So we're going to add some more geometry targets. And so I'll come in with this place line, our geometry line. I'm going to use AccuDraw again. And this one, I'm going to offset 0.04. So I'm just going to set the origin for AccuDraw so we can drag it out. And we can lock out AccuDraw and key in our 0.04 and enter. So that kicks us off just that little bit, the 0.04 off of that target. There's a reason for that. It's all about lining up these edges and just snap to that new target that we just made. We're going to come up here to the left-hand side and do the same thing. We'll snap, set our origin, lock out our axis, key in the 0.04, and enter. It kicked us off just that little bit that we need again, and we'll connect these two. Now what we want to do is we actually want to go back through and we want to complex these three elements that we just made together. So go to complex geometry, and we'll choose this top one here, complex by element. I like to stay zoomed out just a little bit so we can check the direction of these. You see the little blue indicator arrow as we choose these elements. And we're going to go counterclockwise here. And call that good. And reset to complete. All right, so we've kind of got the elements that we need. We need do a little bit more manipulation, add a few more elements and a few more vertical targets to this. So one of the first things that we want to do is come back in here and grab our new complex element, and we'll come in and get the profile view. So since we have that now, this is where Civil AccuDraw is your friend. We'll kick that off and we'll make sure that we're in station elevation mode. What we want to do now is we can choose the tool and we want to do profile complex by VPI in this case. And so right now we're free floating. As we do, you see that the station is changing, same, and the Z is changing. So the best way I found to do this, and I've got some pre-calculated elevations that we're going to use, I like to kind of just hover over the beginning of that. And you'll see that yellow indicator, and that means that it's on target. It's on point where we want to be at the beginning of that element horizontally. So I'm going to actually focus on the station and just hit enter to lock that one. And so for the Z, I know the Z elevation for this is going to be 23.26, and we'll lock that out. So we've locked out those two, and you can see it went right to that station at that elevation. And so we'll accept it, and I'll zoom in a little bit tighter here. And if we just hover over that vertical line in this view, but it's the horizontal vertice of that complex shape, you see you get that yellow snap again. And that's the actual station that we need. And so we're going to lock that out. And we're going to make a flat line. 23.26 is the elevation for that. And you'll see there's 0 grade on it, and it's 2.67 feet over. We'll accept that. And same thing, as we start working our way to this side, you got the little yellow crosshair, the snap. And so what we have is the station is good. We're going to lock that out. And the value for this is going to be 22.32. And we'll lock that out. And you see it went right to it. We'll accept that. And now we're going to finish up our last point on this profile, our station. We got our snap. Also, to make it flat, 22.32. Enter to lock it out, and accept, and just do a reset. And we'll get out of that mode. Now that we've got our new profile element, we're going to go through and just select it, and we'll set it as active. All right. So now there's a couple other things that we can do. We can come in, get a little gap here. We got that 0.4 that we left. So we can actually take this horizontal and now slide it forward, accept it. Let's do the same up top so we don't miss anything. Just that little bit of gap, highlight the element, grab the slider, and hopefully on this one. And that worked. It wasn't too short to where we had to make some other changes there. All right. So the next thing we want to do is we want to true up this profile. And let's turn off the civil AccuDraw for right now. All right. So let's open our profile view for that element. And you'll see that this black line here, these extents now further out based on our horizontal element. So we'll just have to drag this out. And there's our yellow crosshair, and accept it. And that's good. Go to the other side, do the same thing. All right. Now we can just drag this out just a little bit. And now we've modified that profile. So now everything lines up correctly. Now what we want to do is we want to create a new target that's going to represent where we're going to put our concrete slope pavement that is going to come off the bridge wall, and it's going to connect to the top of the MSE wall coping. What I like to do here is we'll just kick AccuDraw off again. And so we're just going to copy this. I'm going to lock it out. This distance is also going to be 0.67. Lock it out and accept it. We don't need any profile elements on these. They're just going to be targets for us to place some new horizontal geometry. And we move it down. It's already locked out and chooses that 0.67. And we're good there. All right. So I'm going to switch this to construction lines green just to have a little bit different color for some clarity on what we're going to do. So I'm going to choose the line between points. Let's come in now, and I'm a big fan of just intersecting these guys so I know exactly that they come out at the right spots. Intersect that and that. So we're all set from that standpoint. Now we've got this new target that's going to be our concrete slope pavement target. We need to put a profile on this. Let's open the profile view for that. And since there's no profile, there's no active profile even, we've got to make one. We're going to kick off our civil AccuDraw again. Make sure that we're in station elevation mode. And let's do the profile complex by VPI. All right, so same thing here. We're free floating. We're gonna come over and let it tentative on that station, and we're gonna tab around until we get to the 0, and we'll just enter to lock it out. Now our first elevation on this is gonna be down at 22.36 is gonna be your RZ, so 22.36, and we'll lock that out. And you can see it went right to it. And see our crosshair, we're gonna lock out our stationing, And this elevation is going to be 23.30, and we'll lock that out. Accept, and just do a reset. Now, don't forget to come back in and select your element and set that profile as the active profile. And so now we're all set. We've got our geometry, and yeah, there was quite a few steps to get here, but everything's going to be lined up, everything's going to be trued up, and hopefully we come up with something that looks a lot like what we saw on the splash screen with how that wall wraps around. But at this point now, we can start adding our linear templates, and I'm going to go through, and now that we have geometry on these, we have profiles, we actually have the linear template option that we can start placing these. I'm going to go ahead and turn off Civil AccuDraw. Let's turn on regular AccuDraw again. So let's choose, we're going to choose a template here. For these, we're going to choose this retaining wall permanent vertical. And this is pretty much exactly what's delivered with the workspace, but as you can see, there's a little white component over here. We'll talk more about that later, but that's going to be our wall quantity component, and that comes from the top of the leveling pad. And that's going to go up, in this case here, just to the top of the wall. In a case where you have a coping, it runs up through the top of the coping. And that is just an element that's slightly off vertical, and it's on a different feature definition, the component is, that you can isolate it and get wall quantities from. So we're going to choose that permanent vertical. We'll say OK. And we'll accept that. So we're going to just choose the start of our element here and just go to the end and accept it. Now, this is pretty important as to which direction you choose. You can see the bar changes. So in this case, it's kind of slight, but you want to make sure that it's going to the inside of where your retaining wall is going to be. So we'll choose that, and we'll click through our prompts, and it placed that linear template for us. And we're just going to work our way around. So choose that. We're going to use the same template, the retaining wall permanent vertical, start, and see that inside and out. So we wanted to go to the inside, select, go through the prompts. All right, let's go up and do the other side. Select our element, start at the beginning, go to the end, make sure it's going to the inside. Again, go through the prompts. Last one for this template, go to the beginning and accept, make sure it's going to the inside, accept through the prompts. One more, there we go. All right, so now we've got those wall templates applied to that geometry that we set up. So now we're going to do the front face of the retaining wall that's going to have the coping on it. So we're going to choose that element, and we can Alt down in here to come up and choose this the coping. You can see that quantity element or that quantity component that runs up and through the coping. We'll say OK, and we'll accept that. Let's start at the beginning. You can see if you just go around, it'll trace around that's a complex element that we created and set the profile for. And 0, up and around. And this one is ever so slight, but you can see we want to choose to the outside on this one. Click through our prompts. All right. So that looks correct. Now we got one last element that we're going to put a template on. And this is going to be for our concrete slope pavement that connects the end bent back wall. It connects it to the coping of the retaining wall. So again, we'll just do that Alt down to choose a new template. And this one's called retaining wall slope pavement. And I'm going to say OK on that. We'll click through the prompts. Let's do start. We'll just choose the bottom and go up through the top. And in this case here, we want to make sure that this is also facing the outside before we select it. And we'll click through the prompts. And there we go. Just do a quick reset here. I'm going to close this profile box. All right, now we have what looks like a box wall or wraparound wall. I'm going to go through it real quick. And let's click in here to activate this view. Let's turn off this excess miss. That is actually going to be our wall quantity component. but we'll turn it off for now so there's no confusion. All right, so in this view, I like to go through and we can change this to, let's change it to illustration modeling and we'll brighten it up a little bit. All right, so let's go back to our references. Let's see how that bridge looks around it. All right, so we've got the highlight turned on for this, so it's easy to see. And let's come in and we can choose rotate view. We're gonna do dynamic rotate and we can click anywhere on our model. And as we can start rotating it around, you'll see how, in this approach slab, we've got a notch in here that accepts the wall. That was all part of that geometry that we put in and set horizontally, set vertically, and that lines up pretty good. Zoom out a little bit. And as we twist this around, you can see that it looks like it's skinned up pretty well. Comes up under the cheek wall here, and then we got the wraparound in the front. You can also see the leveling pad. So, all right, that kind of wraps up this part of it for placing the wraparound wall. The next thing that we're going to get into is we're going to come back into our plan view and we're going to go through and we're going to actually place some roadway MSE wall at this point. So normally we wouldn't be placing a roadway backbone. We're going to place a template in here. We wouldn't be doing that in our wall model file. As looking forward to these wall modeling files and, them being signed and sealed maybe by the structures engineer, we'd want to keep our roadway separate in this point. So let's do this. Let's go through and let's turn on our default 3D and let's turn on our bridge model. All right, now we can see those. They look pretty good. Let's actually go through now and we can place we want to place a new corridor. So let's go to our corridors. Let's do a new corridor. And it wants us to choose the corridor baseline, which this baseline just happened to be in our OBM model, and that's fine. It'll work well for this purposes and save us a little bit of time for demonstration. So locate the corridor baseline, reset for active profile, and alignment 1 is good. We'll keep that name. You can see we've got a new corridor. And now that we got the pop-up, it allows us to choose a template. So we're going to go through and just from our template library for the training exercise, we're going to choose our roadway backbone template. And now we can alt down and we'll come in and we've got a template predefined here. We just get a couple of lanes and some shoulder and some base and everything else going on here. Just enough for us to use as a illustration example. So we'll say okay on that and we'll click through the prompts. We're going to start it at 0. So go over and we'll select that. And we're going to stop it right at our beginning of approach slab. So you could snap to that element there. You'll see that the station is plus 70 in this case. And we'll go through and accept. So now we've got our retaining wall, or sorry, our backbone placed. We'll come back over to our 3D view and take a quick look at that. Spin that around. Now we don't have our slopes and everything worked out. And normally you would transition, get your shoulders up and tie into your approach slab and get all that squared away. But I think this is good enough for just talking through and showing how it works. All right. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to come through and we want to put in some retaining wall, MSE wall on the outside of these here. So we're actually going to come through and we're going to create a new corridor to place those retaining walls on. And I think we'll start with the right side first. We'll come through. All right, so let's go back to corridors. We'll do a new corridor. And we're just going to choose our baseline. Now, there's numerous ways that you can do this. You can set it at the correct offset already, but I want to show how some of the point controls work for this. Depending on what your model management plan is, your roadway folks might be just adding the retaining wall or the MSE wall to their roadway model, but in this case, we're going to try to keep it separate. So we'll choose that alignment. We're going to reset for active profile. And the corridor name, just use, we'll call it, let's see what we have here, RT 211. All right. And it wants us to choose a template. So if we alt down again, we can choose the MSE right. Okay, on that, we'll click through and we'll do start at 0 and just snap to that plus 70 again. All right, now you see that our right side retaining wall just popped up right in the center of this. So what we need to do now is that we actually want to apply a point control to move this out to the edge of our backbone template. All right, so let's go ahead and start doing that. So if we can go to edits and we can do create point control, and we look at the prompt down here, it says locate corridor. So we're going to choose our right retaining wall corridor and parameter start at 0 and end at 70. We can click through these prompts and let's change this control description name and put an R on there for right. In mode, it's not just vertical, it's not horizontal. We want to choose both because we want that point, our gutter line of that wall, to actually connect at the outside edge of the paved shoulder that's in there. So we're going to choose both in this case. And it's not just linear geometry, we're going to target the corridor feature. All right. So the corridor, we're going to choose alignment 1. And for the point, this one is going to be RT shoulder pavement in. And RT shoulder pavement in. All right. So we got to click through a couple prompts here, and then we can choose our reference feature. So we'll accept that. RT shoulder pavement in, accept. Parameters both. Corridor feature, accept alignment 1, and locate reference feature. So in this case here, we're going to choose, it's going to be the RT shoulder pavement top out. So we'll scroll down here, shoulder pavement, and RT shoulder pavement top out. We know that's the point that we want to connect. See if we can get in here. Right about in here. That's where we're going to connect. So we'll accept that. We'll click through these prompts. Zoom out over here so you can see it move as we accept. And it'll align the MSE wall, align that on the shoulder perfectly. So we'll go through real quick, checking on time. Let's add another corridor for this. We're going to go ahead and just do the left side wall real quick. So we'll do new corridor and look at the baseline, reset for the active profile, and the name. Let's call this one. Let's just put an L on here just to keep it simple. All right, we'll accept that. And now it wants us to choose the template. Again, alt down to choose the MSE left template. We'll say okay. And we'll accept that and then start at 0. And we can just snap to our control line there. Plus 70, accept. All right, and there's our wall. Same thing. We've got to come through now and we've got to make a new point control to move this to the outside. There again, there's numerous ways of doing this. I thought this was a good example of how to use those point controls and connect those, connect the wall to the outside of the paved shoulder. So let's do that real quick. Let's go to edits. Let's choose create point control. It wants us to locate the corridor. So let's go back to our plan view and just so it lights that up. So parameter start, we're going to be at 0. Accept that, and it automatically defaults to the end at plus 70. And control description, let's go ahead and change that to, let's put an L on there for left. All right, we'll call that good. And so we got a couple of things going on here. We need to make some selections here so you can see that we're using both again, the corridor feature. We'll choose our corridor as alignment 1 as our main corridor that we want to attach to, in this case with the roadway backbone. So for the point up here, we want to choose the LT shoulder pavement in. So let's find that, LT shoulder pavement in. And we'll have to click through a couple of prompts here so we can choose this reference feature. So both corridor feature, alignment 1, and locate reference feature. Now we should be able to choose this in here. And this is going to be LT shoulder pavement top out. LT, let's find that in the list. LT shoulder pavement top out. Click through the prompts. All right, so you see now this is all lined up. Let's twist this around a little bit so we can see. Let's try that again. Click in here to activate it and just dynamic rotate there. So our walls are now in the correct location and that's looking good. So the next thing we want to do, how are we doing on time here? We got enough time. We're going to go through and we want to create some geometry, some mostly vertical geometry to act as a target for this MSE wall leveling pad. And there's numerous ways to do this. We can actually go through and create geometry and we can sketch out a profile on it. But in this case here, our survey folks, or sorry, our structures folks were kind enough to give us a text file that we're going to use, and we're going to import geometry on that. So let's start back over here in our plan view, and we're just going to make some new geometry. So we'll go back to our geometry tab. Construction lines green is good. We'll leave it at that. Go to offsets and tapers. So let's do a single offset partial, and we're going to do that from our baseline or from our center line. And so it wants start parameters. So we're going to start over here at the beginning, and we're going to do -30, or you come down here and do it on the right-hand side. It doesn't matter. So we'll choose that as a start, and end is going to be +70. We'll click through that, and we're actually going to mirror this. So it gives us 2 target elements on either side of those walls, and we're just going to say yes for mirror, and there we go. We got that geometry. So now that we have some lines, we can actually apply our imported profile to these lines. And we'll do that. There's a tool up here where we can go through import and export. And let's do import vertical geometry from ASCII file. So it's asking us, if you look at the prompt here with the cursor, locate plan element. Let's go ahead and do the right side first. And like I said, we've already got a text file that our structures folks gave to us. And we'll just say done on that. So one thing that I wanted to mention real quick is it's all about how that file was formatted, and we can take a look at how this thing was set up. If you go to columns, and this was a little tricky to me, it wasn't very intuitive at first, but so this is the format that the text file came to us in, and we want to make sure that, you got some different options here, but you want to make sure, depending on what that file looks like, is that in my case, I had a comma delimiter, sorry, and then none of this was set, but you see you have different options here. But so in my case, with our file, we want to choose station and elevation. And you can see this is what that profile is going to look like. We'll just say cancel because we don't need to make any changes there. Feature definition, let's go ahead and we'll just, for lack of a better option, let's choose alignment and baseline. And that should be good. Let's rename this from BL, and we'll just go to here and plus T-wall 1. And now what we're going to do is we're going to import that profile and project it onto this new plan view element that we made. So let's hit import and cross our fingers. All right, see how we did. All right, so you can see this construction element over here, and it's got the vertical step in it, and that's going to be our target for our leveling pad, and we'll need to create a point control for that. But we've got a few minutes, so let's go ahead and just do the left-hand side, just so we have both. So let's choose import vertical geometry, and so locate plane element again. Choose that same file. We're just going to assume that the profile is the same for both sides right now. It could be different. Say done. Same thing, gonna set your feature definition, and we'll just choose alignment baseline. We'll change that name again, and strange characters, space is going on there, but let's put our L in for our left side wall, and we'll choose import. All right, let's see where we're at. All right, looks like it's imported. It's hiding behind that wall, but that's okay. All right. Now we want to set our leveling pad point controls here. So we'll get through this pretty quick. The goal here is to get the leveling pad, the top of it, to match this new geometry. All right, so we can go back to our corridors, go to edits, and create point control. And we want to choose our right retaining wall corridor. And we'll start that at 0, and it automatically goes to 70. All right, so parameters, we'll leave the name the same for time. Put an R on that, right retaining wall. So, all right, locate points. Looks like we lost our box here. All right, let's see if we can click through that again. All right, there we go. Jumped off the screen on us. That's all right. So we'll locate that corridor again. Choose that right retaining wall. 7A, get the name in there. That's good. Okay, so now we want to change a few things about this. We want to go from mode. We're going to change it from both to vertical. We want to change control type to linear geometry. All right. And as far as the point goes, we want to choose the RT MSE back bottom in. So let's see if we can choose our point. RT MSE back bottom in is going to be our control point and plan element. And wants us to choose a plan element here. So let's click through these prompts. Vertical, linear geometry, locate plan or profile element, choose our plan, and accept. Click through our prompts. One more. There we go. Now you can see we have that stepped profile in here. And how are we doing on time? All right, we can do the other side. So let's go back to our edits and create point control. Let's choose this left retaining wall. Double check our parameters here. So it's locked to 0, locked to 70. Let's change this. Let's put an L in here. And we're going to use the vertical linear geometry again. And that point, let's go ahead and choose, in this case here, the LT MSE back in. So LT MSE back bottom in. All right, good deal. So let's click through these prompts. LT MSE, I'll accept that. Mode is vertical. Parameters control is linear geometry. And locate plan or profile element. Let's choose that. Left side green target, and we'll click through. And there we go. Let's come back and take a look at our finished product. Hopefully this looks a lot like what we saw on that splash screen. And I believe it might. So we're going to rotate the view here, and let's just choose another target. We'll kind of spin this around and see what it looks like. That seems to look pretty good. We've got our wall and our footer, our leveling pad under our approach slab. Got the front face of that, and we've got our roadway MSE wall, got our wall there, and that seems to look pretty good. I'm gonna come back in and turn off these references real quick so you can see what the result of the MSE quantity component turned out to be. So let's turn all off, and let's turn on that quantity component. And there again, right now it's just set on a temporary level. So we can actually come through now and just take a look at these And like I said, they come from the top of the leveling pad, and they extend all the way up. If it's got a coping, it extends up through the coping. Otherwise, it just stops at the top of the wall. So in this case here, you can just check, and you can see that for this wall, our top sloped area is 2,187.30 square feet. And we'll check another one that we did for our MSC wraparound. Try that again. And same thing, there's our new square footage for that. And it looks like we're almost at the top of the hour. That's all I have. Hopefully this made a lot of sense. Like I said, this is going to be recorded and posted. And the other benefit is that we actually have the PDF walkthrough. And let's take a look. And
Alrighty,
there
it
again,
looks
there's the
like
QR code. So thanks, Matt.
it looks like we had a couple of questions here. Will you have to re-import the vertical geometry if the leveling pad profile changes?
Yes.
Okay. And is there a way to have the leveling pad automatically update once the structures updates the profile information?
So automatically, I believe that you would have to just, there again, with that last question, I think re-import that, because you would go through and get that output text file and you re-import that again. So you could go through and do that, or you can modify the geometry that's already in the design file. And there's a couple ways to do that, but it's not connected to anything.
Okay, excellent.
Information-wise.
We do sincerely appreciate you being here, and we appreciate your time. And I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today for the webinar. We'll have another webinar in 2 weeks. And of course, this recording will be posted shortly, hopefully by the end of next week, so you can review that and have that as a resource. So again, thanks everyone. Thanks, Rob. You all have a fantastic day.